The red dust swirled around Laura Bennett's boots as she carefully brushed away centuries of dirt from the alien tablet. The twin suns of Kepler 479 bits cast long shadows across the dig site, making the strange symbols on the stone glow with an eerie purple light. "Dr. Bennett," called out Peter Adams, one of her younger team members. "You need to see this right away." Laura stood up, her joints creaking after hours of careful excavation. At 45, she wasn't as nimble as the fresh-faced graduates who made up most of her archaeology team, but her experience made up for it. She walked over to where Peter stood at the entrance of a newly uncovered chamber. "We found something big," he said, shining his light into the darkness. "Really big." The beam cut through the dusty air, revealing walls covered in flowing script. But what caught Laura's attention was the massive hologram projector in the center of the room. Despite being over 50,000 years old, it still hummed with power. "Get the translation matrix," Laura ordered, her heart racing. This was the kind of discovery archaeologists dreamed about, working alien technology from the mysterious Galaxian civilization. Within an hour, her team had set up their equipment. The chamber was now bright with portable lights, and dozens of scanners recorded every detail of the ancient technology. Annie Rodriguez, their linguistics expert, worked quickly to connect their translation computer to the alien device. "Ready when you are, Chief," Amy said, giving Laura a thumbs up. Laura took a deep breath and pressed her hand against the activation panel. The air above the projector shimmered, and suddenly, the chamber was filled with the image of a Galaxian. The alien was tall and slender, with 4 arms and crystalline growths along its head. Its voice came through their translators, filled with urgency. It had survived 50 millennia. "This is the final warning of Archive Keeper Zix. To any spacefaring civilization that finds this message, heed our words. We have seen it. The stellar devourer, the humans." The alien paused, its crystalline features flickering with what Laura recognized as fear. "The humans have created something that should not exist. We watched them consume a star. Not destroy it. Consume it. Turn it into something else. Our greatest scientists cannot explain how they did it." Laura's team looked at each other in confusion. Humans. 50,000 years ago. That was impossible. They hadn't even mastered fire at that point in history. The message continued. "We tracked the human vessel back through space. It came from a small solar system with a yellow star they call Sol. We planned to stop them, to destroy this weapon before they could use it again. But when our fleet arrived," the alien's voice trembled. "The entire system was gone. Not destroyed, transformed. Every star within 100 light-years had been changed into something our instruments couldn't understand." "This can't be right," Peter whispered. "The translation must be wrong." Amy shook her head. "Multiple systems are confirming the translation. This is what they're saying." The hologram flickered as the Galaxian moved closer to the recording device. "We are leaving this galaxy. Many civilizations mock our fear, call us cowards. They don't understand. The humans aren't just dangerous because they can destroy stars. They're dangerous because they can turn the fundamental forces of the universe into weapons. The stellar devourer isn't a device of destruction. It's a tool of transformation. And that is far more terrifying." The alien stepped back. "We've hidden other archives across the galaxy. Each contains a piece of what we learned about the humans and their weapon. If you find this warning, pray you never encounter them. Or better yet, run. Run as far as you can, because once they emerge from their transformed sector of space, nothing will be able to stop them. This is Archive Keeper Zix, signing the final warning." The hologram vanished, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Laura's mind raced. Her team had just discovered proof that humans had somehow existed as a spacefaring civilization 50,000 years ago. Not only that, but they had possessed technology that terrified one of the most advanced alien species ever discovered. "Check everything," she ordered. "I want every symbol on these walls scanned and translated. checked the dating on the technology multiple times. We need to be absolutely certain about this. As her team scrambled to work, Laura pulled out her communicator. This kind of discovery needed to be reported immediately. She connected to the secure channel for Earth's Science Council. This is Chief Archaeologist Laura Bennett on Kepler 479 bits. Priority 1 communication for the Council. She paused, looking at the ancient warning device. We found something that changes everything we know about human history. And I think we might have found out why we've never discovered any advanced alien civilizations in our part of the galaxy. Over the next few hours, more revelations emerged as they translated the writing on the walls. The Zalaxians had left star charts, technical readings, and observations of the human ships they'd encountered. But most importantly, they'd left coordinates, locations of other archives scattered across the galaxy. Look at this, Amy called out, pointing to a section of text. They say the human ships were powered by compressed stellar matter. That's exactly like our modern ships. She looked at Laura with wide eyes. How is that possible? Laura stared at the ancient text, a theory forming in her mind. What if we didn't develop this technology on our own? She said slowly. What if we rediscovered what we'd already invented? But that would mean, Peter started. Time travel. Laura finished. Somewhere in our future, something happens that sends humans into the distant past. And those humans, she gestured at the hologram projector. They built something so powerful it scared an entire civilization into leaving the galaxy. As the sun set outside, casting the chamber into shadow, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just stumbled onto the beginning of something much bigger than a simple archaeological discovery. The warning wasn't just about the past, it was about the future. Their future. She looked at the coordinates of the other archives. Each one was supposed to contain more information about the stellar devourer and the humans who built it. Whatever this weapon was, humanity had built it once before. And now, with their ships already using similar technology to what the Zalaxians described, they might be close to building it again. The question was, would they be ready for the responsibility that came with such power? Laura sent another message to Earth. Request permission to mount expeditions to the other archive locations. If we're going to understand what we're dealing with, we need to find every piece of this puzzle. She looked at her tired but excited team. And we need to find them before anyone else does. As night fell on Kepler 479 bits, the ancient chamber held its secrets in the darkness, waiting for humanity to rediscover its own forgotten power. And perhaps, this time, choose a different path. Commander Robert Nash stood at the window of Earth Defense Station Alpha, watching the holographic display of enemy movements. The Kareth fleet's signature blazed across the map in angry red markers, each representing hundreds of warships moving steadily toward human space. How long do we have? He asked, his voice tight with concern. Lieutenant Mary Clark checked her datapad. At their current speed, they'll reach our outer colonies in 72 hours, sir. Nash ran a hand through his graying hair. In 20 years of service, he'd never seen a threat this massive. The Kareth had appeared 6 months ago, destroying everything in their path. They weren't interested in talking. Every attempt at communication had been met with silence, followed by violence. The station's alert system suddenly flashed blue, indicating a priority transmission. Admiral Jennifer Woods' hologram appeared in the center of the command room. Even through the projection, her expression was grave. Commander Nash, I've just received disturbing news from our deep space sensors, she said. The Kareth fleet is 3 times larger than our initial estimates. They've destroyed 6 different alien civilizations in the past year alone. Nash felt his stomach sink. What are our options, Admiral? I'm calling an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. But first, I need you to look at something. Woods' hologram waved her hand, bringing up new data. This just came in from an archaeological expedition on Kepler 479 bits. Chief Archaeologist Laura Bennett made a discovery that might change everything. Nash read through the report quickly, his eyes widening. "This can't be right," he muttered. "A weapon that can consume stars. And we built it 50,000 years ago, apparently," Wood said. "Or we'll build it. The temporal mechanics give me a headache." She leaned forward. "But here's the important part. The technology they described matches theoretical designs in our most advanced research labs. We might be able to recreate it." "Should we?" Nash asked. "A weapon that powerful?" "That's what we're going to discuss at the meeting. Get to Earth immediately. And Commander," Woods' hologram flickered, "don't share this with anyone else yet. The panic would be unfortunate." 4 hours later, Nash sat in the underground chamber of the Earth Defense Council. The room was filled with military leaders, scientists, and government officials. Laura Bennett was there too, looking tired after her rushed journey from Kepler 479 bits. Admiral Wood stood at the center of the room. "The situation is clear," she began. "The Kirith fleet will reach our territory soon. Our normal defenses won't be enough. Dr. Bennett has discovered evidence of a weapon that could save us, but building it comes with risks." "Risks?" General Paul Evans scoffed. "The Kirith are going to wipe us out. What could be riskier than that?" Laura Bennett stepped forward. "The weapon doesn't just destroy stars," she explained. "It transforms them into something else. According to the Xylaxian records, it changed the fundamental nature of space itself in the regions where it was used. We don't fully understand what that means." The room erupted in debate. Nash watched as different factions argued back and forth. Some wanted to build the weapon immediately. Others warned about repeating the mistakes that had apparently led to their ancestors being thrown back in time. A loud alarm cut through the arguments. Lieutenant Clark's voice came over the speakers. "Admiral, the Kirith fleet has increased speed. New arrival estimate is 36 hours. The room fell silent. Admiral Woods looked at each person in turn. "We need to make a decision now. Our research labs have been working on similar technology. With the information from the Xylaxian archives, we might be able to build a prototype quickly. But we need to be unanimous." Nash stood up. "What about the other archives?" Dr. Bennett's report mentioned multiple locations. Laura nodded. "Yes. Each archive supposedly contains different pieces of information about the weapon. But they're scattered across the galaxy. We'd never reach them in time." "Maybe we don't need to," said Dr. Sandra Morris, Earth's leading physicist. She'd been quiet until now, studying the technical data from the Kepler site. "These readings suggest the weapon works by creating a quantum network across multiple stars. It doesn't just consume them. It links them together into some kind of vast computer." "How does that help us?" General Evans asked. "Because," Dr. Morris said, pointing to the data, "our ships already use a primitive version of this technology. We compress stellar matter for fuel. If we could modify our entire fleet at once." Admiral Woods' eyes lit up with understanding. "We could create a smaller version of the weapon. Not as powerful as the original, but maybe enough to defend ourselves." The next few hours were a blur of activity. While Dr. Morris and her team worked to modify the fleet's engines, Nash coordinated with colony worlds, preparing them for possible evacuation. Laura Bennett and her team analyzed every bit of data from the Xylaxian archive, looking for any details they might have missed. 24 hours before the Kirith's expected arrival, they gathered again. The mood was tense but determined. "The modifications are ready," Dr. Morris reported. "Every ship in the fleet can now link their stellar compression drives. In theory, it should create a localized version of what the ancient humans built. But," she hesitated, "we don't know exactly what will happen when we activate it." Admiral Woods looked around the room. "The Kirith have refused all communication. They've destroyed every civilization they've encountered. We know they have some way of blocking normal weapons. That's how they've defeated everyone else. This might be our only chance." She turned to Nash. "Commander, I'm putting you in charge of the defense fleet. If this works the way we think it will, you'll need to coordinate all ships simultaneously. Nash nodded, feeling the weight of the responsibility. And if it doesn't work? Then we'll have given the colonies more time to evacuate, Woods said grimly. Either way, we're about to find out why the ancients really feared us. As Nash left the council chamber, Laura Bennett caught up with him. Commander, she said, holding out a data chip. We found something else in the archives. The Zalaxians didn't just fear the weapon. They feared what it represented. Humanity's ability to take the impossible and make it real. Whatever happens tomorrow, remember that. Nash took the chip and headed to his ship. As he looked at the fleet gathering in Earth's orbit, he wondered if they were about to make the same choice their ancestors had made 50,000 years ago. And if they were, what would it mean for the future or the past? The next few hours would answer that question. One way or another, they were about to discover exactly what the stellar devourer could do. Nash just hoped they were ready for the consequences. Dr. Daniel Carter wiped sweat from his forehead as he descended deeper into Mercury's underground vaults. Despite the advanced cooling systems in his protective suit, the heat from the planet's surface still seeped through. But he couldn't stop now. Not when he was so close to understanding the truth. How much further? Asked his research partner. Alice Brown, her voice crackling through the comm system. Just ahead, Daniel replied, checking the glowing map on his wrist display. The sensors show a large chamber about 50 meters down. They were following coordinates found in the Zalaxian archives, leading them to what appeared to be an ancient human facility buried beneath Mercury's surface. After Laura Bennett's discovery on Kepler 479 bits, similar sites had been found throughout the solar system. This one might hold the most important answers of all. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber that their lights couldn't fully illuminate, but what they could see made them both stop in amazement. The walls were covered in massive screens, all of them somehow still functioning after 50,000 years. It's some kind of research facility, Alice whispered, approaching one of the screens. Ancient English text scrolled across it, mixed with complex equations. Look at these dates, 2487. But that's the future, Daniel finished. Our future. He connected his tablet to the facility's computer system. The translation program is working. Let me see if I can. The screen suddenly came to life all at once, and a holographic figure appeared before them. It was a woman in a military uniform, her face tired but determined. This is Admiral Karen Rodriguez of the Earth Science Fleet, the hologram said. If you're seeing this, it means our experiment failed, or succeeded, depending on how you look at it. She smiled sadly. We didn't mean to come to the past. We were testing a new form of faster-than-light travel. Something went wrong with the calculations. Instead of moving through space, we moved through time. Daniel and Alice looked at each other in shock. This was it, the explanation for how humans had advanced technology 50,000 years ago. The hologram continued. There were 12 ships in our fleet when the accident happened. We emerged in different time periods, scattered across 50,000 years of history. This facility contains our research into what happened and what we built afterward. More screens activated, showing technical diagrams and test results. When we realized we couldn't return to our time, we decided to protect humanity's future, our past. The only way we could. We built the stellar devourer. But it's not what the Zalaxians thought it was. The hologram waved her hand, bringing up new images. It's not a weapon, not really. It's a tool for transcendence. The device doesn't destroy stars. It transforms them into vast quantum computers, linked across space and time. Each star becomes a node in a network that can reshape reality itself. Daniel's hands flew across his tablet, recording everything. This is incredible, he muttered. They weren't trying to build a weapon. They were trying to create something that could prevent time travel accidents like theirs from happening again. But there's more, Alice said, pointing to another screen. Look at these power readings. The device doesn't just transform stars. It creates a kind of safety net across space. That's why the Zalaxians couldn't understand it. It wasn't operating in normal spacetime. The hologram of Admiral Rodriguez grew serious. We knew the risks. Transforming stars would change the nature of space itself in ways we couldn't fully predict. But we had no choice. We'd seen glimpses of possible futures, terrible futures where humanity destroyed itself. We had to do something. She paused, looking directly at where Daniel and Alice stood, as if she could see them across the millennia. The stellar devourer was never meant to be used as a weapon. Its true purpose is to prevent catastrophic damage to the fabric of spacetime. When activated, it creates a network of transformed stars that automatically stabilizes temporal anomalies. We hoped it would prevent anyone else from suffering our fate. Daniel walked around the hologram, studying the technical displays. The compressed stellar matter in our modern ships, he said slowly. It's not just similar to their technology. It's an evolved version of it. We've been unconsciously rebuilding their work all this time. That's why the Kareth are coming, Alice realized. Their attacks on other civilizations, they're not random. They're targeting anyone who's close to developing this technology. They must understand what it means. More data flowed across the screens. The hologram explained the technical details of the device, but Daniel's attention was caught by something else, a series of calculations showing possible futures. Alice, he called out urgently. Look at this. According to their predictions, if the device isn't activated at exactly the right moment, it could cause the same kind of accident that brought them here in the first place. Creating a time loop, Alice finished. Everything that happened would happen again. Unless we do something different, Daniel said. He opened a communication channel to Earth Defense Command. This is Dr. Daniel Carter. I need to speak to Commander Nash immediately. We found something crucial about the stellar devourer. While they waited for a response, Daniel and Alice continued to study the facility's data. The more they learned, the clearer it became. The weapon wasn't just a defense against the Kareth. It was humanity's attempt to protect itself from its own potential mistakes. One more thing. The hologram of Admiral Rodriguez said, "We left copies of our research in multiple locations. Each has a piece of the puzzle. But be careful. The device is powerful enough to change the course of history. Literally. Use it wisely." The hologram flickered and vanished, leaving Daniel and Alice surrounded by the glowing screens of humanity's past future. "Commander Nash is ready to receive your transmission," the comm system announced. Daniel took a deep breath. "Commander, we've found the truth about the stellar devourer, and we need to act fast. There's only one way to use it that won't create a temporal paradox, but we'll need every ship in the fleet to do it right." As he explained what they'd discovered, Daniel looked at the ancient screens, still displaying their warnings and predictions from 50,000 years ago. They had less than 12 hours before the Kareth arrived. Time enough to prepare, if they worked quickly. The question was, could they avoid repeating the mistakes of their time-lost ancestors, or were they destined to create the very paradox they were trying to prevent? Captain Susan Hayes stood on the bridge of the starship Hyperion, staring at the coordinates that had just arrived from Mercury. The message from Dr. Carter had changed everything they thought they knew about the stellar devourer. "Plot these coordinates," she ordered her navigation officer, John Wright. "All of them." As the points appeared on the main screen, a pattern emerged. Scattered across a seemingly empty region of space were dozens of small red dwarf stars. But they weren't random. They formed a perfect geometric pattern. "It's already there," Susan said quietly. "The network of transformed stars. Our ancestors built it 50,000 years ago." Her second-in-command, Frank Martinez, leaned forward to study the display. "But why can't we detect any energy readings from them? If these stars were turned into quantum computers, they should be giving off some kind of signal." "Because they're waiting," said Dr. Linda Phillips, the ship's science officer. She had been analyzing the data from Mercury. "According to these files, the network is dormant. It needs a specific signal to activate, a signal that can only come from ships using compressed stellar matter for fuel." The Hyperion's communication system crackled. "Captain Hayes, "This is Commander Nash. Have you reviewed the coordinates?" "Yes, sir," Susan replied. "My science team is analyzing them now. But there's something else you should see." She nodded to Linda, who sent her findings to Earth Command. Nash's voice was tight when he responded. "This confirms what Dr. Carter found. The stellar devourer isn't just a weapon. It's a system waiting to be activated. And our ships are the key." General Andrew Morrison's voice cut in. "We don't have time for this. The Kurth fleet will be here in 6 hours. We need to make a decision now." Susan pulled up the latest scout reports. The Kurth fleet was massive. Thousands of ships approaching in perfect formation. Their weapons had easily destroyed every civilization they'd encountered so far. "There's more, sir," Susan said. "Dr. Phillips found something in the temporal calculations. The network of transformed stars. It's not just for defense. It's designed to prevent time travel accidents by stabilizing space-time itself. But if we activate it wrong, we could cause the very accident that sent our ancestors back in time in the first place." Nash finished, creating an endless loop. The bridge fell silent as everyone considered the implications. They had found the weapon they needed to save humanity, but using it might trap them in a cycle of their own making. "Call an emergency council," General Morrison ordered. "Everyone who's seen this data needs to be there." 1 hour. 50 minutes later, Susan stood in the virtual meeting space, her hologram joining dozens of others. She saw Commander Nash, Dr. Carter, Laura Bennett, and military leaders from every human colony. Admiral Woods spoke first. "We've all seen the data. We know what the stellar devourer really is, but we need to decide. Do we activate it? And if we do, how do we avoid creating the time loop?" Dr. Carter's hologram stepped forward. "The files we found on Mercury included activation sequences. The original fleet, our ancestors, they built in safeguards. If we coordinate all our ships perfectly, we might be able to wake the network without causing temporal distortions." "Might?" General Morrison asked sharply. "That's not very reassuring." "It's better odds than we have against the Kurth," Laura Bennett pointed out. "We've seen what their weapons can do. No conventional defense will stop them." Susan raised her hand. "There's something else we need to consider. The Kurth, they're not just attacking randomly. They're specifically targeting civilizations that are close to developing this technology. They must know what it can do. They're afraid of it," Nash realized. "Just like the Zalaxians were, but the Zalaxians ran away. The Kurth are trying to destroy it before it can be used." Admiral Woods looked at each person in turn. "We need to vote. Do we use the stellar devourer? And if we do, who takes responsibility if something goes wrong?" "I'll do it," Susan said, surprising herself. "The Hyperion is the closest ship to the first coordinate point. We can lead the activation sequence." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Commander Nash nodded. "The Hyperion has our best stellar compression drive. If anyone can do this right, it's your crew, Captain Hayes." The vote was quick and unanimous. They had no choice. They had to try. 4 hours until Kurth arrival, the computer announced as Susan returned to her bridge. "Send the activation sequences to all ships," she ordered. "We'll need perfect coordination. One mistake, and we could tear space-time apart." Linda Phillips worked quickly at her station. "Captain, I've analyzed the sequence. We need to activate the stellar compression drives of every ship at exactly the same moment. The energy pulse should wake up the dormant star network." "And then?" Frank asked. "And then we find out if we're about to save humanity or accidentally send ourselves 50,000 years into the past." Susan looked at the tactical display. Hundreds of human ships were moving into position around the dormant star network. The Kurth fleet grew closer with each passing minute. "Send to all ships," she ordered. "This is Captain Hayes. In 3 hours, we attempt the activation. Every ship needs to be in exact position. Check and double-check your coordinates. We get one chance at this." As her crew prepared for what was coming, Susan thought about the warning they'd found on Kepler 479 bits. The Zalaxians hadn't understood what they were seeing. They thought humans had built a weapon of destruction. Instead, they'd built something far more amazing, a safety net for all of spacetime. Now, 50,000 years later, their descendants were about to try using it. Susan just hoped they were ready for whatever happened next. All ships report ready, Frank announced. Beginning final countdown. The attack came without warning. The Kareth fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel 3 hours ahead of schedule, their massive ships appearing directly above the human colony of New Eden. Colony Governor Patricia Russell was in her office when the first alarm sounded. "Status report," she demanded, rushing to the command center. 50 Kareth warships in orbit," replied the defense officer. "They're launching drop ships. Ground invasion imminent." Patricia activated the emergency broadcast system. "This is Governor Russell. All civilians proceed to emergency shelters immediately." "This is not a drill." She turned to her military commander. "Lieutenant Christopher Baker, how long can we hold them?" Chris checked the defense grid displays. "Our orbital shields are at full power. Ground defenses are ready." "But Mom," he pointed to the readings from the Kareth ships. "Their energy signatures are off the charts. Nothing like what our scouts reported." In orbit above New Eden, the human defense fleet engaged the Kareth ships. The space around the planet lit up with weapons fire, but something strange was happening. "Mom," one of the sensor operators called out. "The Kareth, they're scanning our ships, specifically our engines." Patricia watched as the alien ships changed formation, focusing their attacks on ships with the newest stellar compression drives. They knew exactly what to target. The command center's main screen flickered, and Commander Nash's face appeared. "Governor Russell, help is coming. The Hyperion and the main fleet are almost ready. You just need to hold out for 2 more hours." "We'll do our best," Patricia replied, but she wasn't sure they had 2 hours. The first Kareth drop ships broke through the orbital defenses, landing in the colony's outskirts. Lieutenant Baker coordinated the ground forces from his tactical station. "Defense teams, fall back to fortified positions," he ordered. "Let them come to us." The Kareth emerged from their ships, tall, armored figures with multiple limbs and advanced energy weapons. But they weren't attacking randomly. They'd moved with purpose, heading straight for the colony's power plants and research facilities. "They're after our stellar compression technology," Chris realized. "They're not here to destroy us. They're here to stop us from activating the network." In orbit, the battle grew more intense. Human ships fought desperately, using every trick they knew. The Kareth's weapons were powerful, but they were focusing so much on the engines that they left other weaknesses exposed. Captain Kevin Walsh of the destroyer Sentinel saw an opportunity. "All ships, pattern Delta 7, he called out. His small squadron broke formation, diving between 2 Kareth cruisers. Their conventional weapons might not do much damage, but they could distract the aliens. On the ground, the fighting reached the colony's main power facility. Lieutenant Baker led the defense personally. His troops dug in behind makeshift barriers. "Hold the line," he shouted as the Kareth advanced. "They don't get near that reactor." The aliens' weapons carved through buildings and defense barriers, but the human soldiers stood their ground. They had trained for this, prepared for invasion. What they weren't prepared for was what happened next. One of the Kareth commanders stepped forward. It raised a device, and a booming voice echoed in perfect English. "Stop this, May-DNES. You do not understand what at you are able to do." The fighting paused. Lieutenant Baker raised his hand, signaling his troops to hold position, but stay ready. The Kareth commander continued. "Your stellar compression technology. It is drawing power from the same network we have found to maintain for millennia. If you activate it, fully, ULDSTABILIZ or ELITY. In the command center, Patricia exchanged looks with her staff. "Get me Captain Hayes on the Hyperion," she ordered. The connection was made quickly. Susan Hayes's face appeared on screen, her bridge showing signs of battle damage. "Governor Russell, we're almost ready. The fleet is in position around the dormant stars." "Captain, wait," Patricia said. "The Kareth, they're trying to tell us something about the network. They say it's dangerous." On the Hyperion's bridge, Susan Hayes received more urgent news. "Captain," Linda Phillips called out, "I'm detecting massive energy fluctuations from the dormant stars. They're not just computers, they're containing something." The Kareth commander's voice boomed across all channels now. "50,000 years ago, your ancestors built this network to prevent a disaster. But they did not understand. The network does not prevent time travel accidents. It contains a rupture in spacetime that could destroy everything." Susan looked at her tactical display. The entire human fleet was in position, ready to activate their stellar compression drives. One word from her, and they would wake up the ancient network. The Kareth aren't invaders, she realized. They're containment. They've been trying to stop anyone from accidentally activating the network. Commander Nash's voice came through. "Captain Hayes, we're picking up temporal distortions around the dormant stars. They're getting stronger." The Kareth commander made one final plea. "Your ancestors created a prison for something they could not destroy. We have GVARDD it for 50 millennia. If you activate the network now, you will set it free." On New Eden's surface, Lieutenant Baker lowered his weapon. The Kareth forces did the same. In orbit, the massive alien fleet held position, no longer attacking but ready to act if needed. Governor Patricia Russell connected all command channels. "Captain Hayes, Commander Nash, what do we do?" Susan Hayes looked at her crew, then at the swirling patterns of dark energy now visible around the dormant stars. Their ancestors hadn't built a defensive network. They'd built a prison for something so dangerous it could only be contained by transformed stars. And now they had a choice: activate the network and risk releasing whatever was trapped inside, or find another way to save humanity. "All ships, hold position," she ordered. "Do not activate stellar compression drives." She opened a channel to the Kareth commander. "We're standing down, but we need to know everything. What exactly did our ancestors trap in there?" The answer would change their understanding of not just the past, but the future of humanity itself. The great hall of the Kareth command ship fell silent as the hologram display activated. Representatives from both species, human and Kareth, gathered around the central platform. Admiral Jennifer Woods led the human delegation, while the Kareth Supreme Guardian, whose name translated roughly to Eternal Watcher, represented their side. "Show them," the Supreme Guardian said, its translator converting the complex harmonics of its voice into English. The hologram expanded, showing a three-dimensional map of space. At its center, the network of transformed stars glowed with an eerie purple light. But now, with the Kareth sensors, they could see what their instruments had missed: waves of dark energy pulsing between the stars. 50,000 years ago, the Supreme Guardian began, your ancestors appeared in our space. Their ships were damaged, their crews desperate. They had seen something during their failed time travel experiment, something that followed them back. Admiral Woods leaned forward. What followed them? They called it the void consciousness, a being from between spaces, between times. It was drawn to their temporal wake like a predator to blood and water. The hologram shifted, showing ancient recordings. Human ships, designs no one recognized. fighting against what looked like living darkness. Your ancestors were clever, the Supreme Guardian continued. They couldn't destroy it, but they found a way to trap it. They transformed stars into quantum computers, creating a prison of pure mathematics and energy. The stellar devourer wasn't a weapon, it was the key to building that prison. On the Hyperion, still holding position near the dormant star network, Captain Susan Hayes watched the transmission with her crew. Linda Phillips worked furiously at her science station, comparing the Kareth's data with their own readings. "They're right," Linda announced. "Our stellar compression drives, they're not just similar to the prison technology. They're starting to resonate with it. That's why the void consciousness is becoming active again." The Supreme Guardian's voice carried a weight of millennia. "We became the guardians of the prison. Whenever a civilization came close to developing similar technology, we had to stop them. The prison cannot be disturbed. Even the smallest temporal fluctuation could weaken its walls." "But you didn't just attack," Admiral Wood said, understanding dawning. "The civilizations you destroyed, they wouldn't listen. They tried to activate their technology anyway. Yes, many call us monsters, but we knew the true monster was what lay trapped in that network. The Xylaxians, they saw your ancestors building the prison. They thought it was a weapon and flowed in fear. They never knew they were running from the only thing protecting this galaxy." Back on New Eden, Governor Patricia Russell and Lieutenant Baker watched as civilian engineers worked alongside Kareth technicians, modifying the colony's power systems. "The resonance is growing stronger," a Kareth scientist reported. "The prison weakens with each passing day." In the Great Hall, Admiral Wood stood up. "Then we need to work together. Our ancestors built this prison. We can help maintain it." The Supreme Guardian's crystalline eyes studied her. "It is not that simple. The prison was designed to last 50,000 years. That time is almost up. Soon, it will fail completely." The room erupted in concerned murmurs. Captain Hayes, watching from her ship, felt a chill. "That's why they were so desperate to stop us," she said to her crew. "Our drives weren't just weakening the prison. We were about to activate it right as it's about to fail." Commander Nash's voice came over the comm. "Then we don't restore the old prison. We build a new one." All eyes turned to him as he stepped forward in the Great Hall. "Our ancestors built this in a hurry, while being chased by something they barely understood. But now we have time. We have the Kareth's knowledge. We have 50,000 years of technological advancement." Dr. Daniel Carter, who had been quietly analyzing data from Mercury, joined the discussion. "He's right. The files we found, they weren't just about building the prison. They were about improving it. Our ancestors left us the plans for something better." The Supreme Guardian rose to its full height. "You would risk this, even knowing what might escape if you fail." "We don't have a choice," Admiral Woods replied. "The old prison is failing. We can either try to build a new one, or watch it break and face the void consciousness unprepared." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Human and Kareth ships moved together, taking up positions around the star network. Scientists from both species worked frantically, combining their knowledge. On the Hyperion's bridge, Susan Hayes watched the final preparations. Her ship would lead the first phase, using their stellar compression drive to establish a resonance pattern that would let them transfer the entity to its new cage. "All ships report ready," Frank Martinez announced. Susan took a deep breath. "Send to all ships. Begin sequence on my mark." In the Great Hall, humans and Kareth watched together as hundreds of ships activated their drives in perfect harmony. The dormant stars began to pulse with energy. Dark tendrils of something alien and ancient stirred within their prison. "Now we see," the Supreme Guardian said, "if humanity's greatest achievement will be building a prison for a god of chaos, or accidentally releasing it." The stars flared. Space itself seemed to bend. And in that moment, as two civilizations worked together to contain a horror from beyond time, they finally understood why the ancients had truly feared humanity's power. It wasn't because humans could destroy stars or build superweapons. It was because, when faced with something impossible, something that threatened the very fabric of reality, humanity's response wasn't to run away. It was to look at the impossible and say, "We can fix this." As the new prison took shape, Captain Hayes smiled. Maybe that was what really scared the Zelaxians all those years ago. Not humanity's capacity for destruction, but their relentless determination to solve problems that shouldn't be solvable. The stars blazed one final time, and the transfer began. Whatever happened next, two civilizations that had been enemies mere hours ago were now united in purpose, and that perhaps was the greatest achievement of all.